in the heart of a forgotten galaxy and a planet that should not exist. Prometheus catalogued as rocky, without atmosphere, without life, a cold stone adrift in deep space. But beneath its surface, something pulses, something ancient enough to predate star charts, names, even the concept of linear time. The first probes detected structures, buried cities, towers corroded by vacuum, and silhouettes of technology that defy all known logic. No civilization recognizes Prometheus. No species claims it, and yet there it stands. A remnant of a past no one remembers. The Interstellar Alliance classified it as a draft planet, an abandoned experiment, perhaps an inactivated AI test world, a calculation error, a cosmic oversight. But they were wrong, because when the mission led by exobiologist Elian Drex landed on its surface, Prometheus awakened. And the first words spoken by the dormant intelligence, echoing in the heart of a millennia-old silicon dome, wasn't a greeting. It was a recognition. Welcome back, Elian. But he had never been there, yet the planet remembered him. At the silent edge of the Selim constellation, between radio voids and unmapped regions, there is a planet that was never meant to be found. Its name, Prometheus. It doesn't orbit a living star. It emits no heat. It reflects no light. It simply exists, cold, still, asleep, and yet brimming with impossible signals. The first sign was faint, a strange echo of unnatural pulses picked up by autonomous mapping probes. Initially dismissed as cosmic noise, but then came the patterns, fractal rhythms, repeated structures, clues not just of technology, but of intention. Prometheus had no atmosphere, no life forms, and yet, beneath its sterile crust, there was something even the oldest civilizations couldn't identify: buried towers, silicon domes eroded by time, cyclopean infrastructures like the bones of a buried titan. There was no doubt Prometheus had once been active, but whoever built it left no name, no signature, no history. Galactic Alliance academies labeled it a draft world, a failed automated scientific colony, abandoned before activation, an uninitialized AI lab, an engineering mistake, a purposeless experiment. But something about that explanation felt wrong. Why build such complex structures on a planet with no function? Why did gravitational sensors show internal fluctuations, as if something still moved inside? And why, even without an active communication network, did orbital satellites report interference, as if the planet was trying to listen? Amid growing controversy, a discreet expedition was authorized, small, silent, highly specialized. Its goal: investigate the source of the signals and verify or debunk the draft world hypothesis. Among the names assigned to the mission was Elian Drex, a human exobiologist, known for his work in biomechanical ruins and for identifying residual intelligence patterns where others saw only dust. Trained to hear what is dead, but not even Elian was prepared for what Prometheus had to say. The journey to Prometheus took 17 cycles, a route far from major corridors, away from public eyes and political radars. This wasn't a diplomatic, scientific, or military mission. It was a covert investigation into a world no one wanted to explain. The deep recon ship Tarsis 4 was refitted for absolute silence. No transmissions, no noise, only internal logs. The Alliance wanted no questions, only data, only silence. The crew was minimal: 3 engineers, an autonomous pilot, and Elian Drex, each trained to handle dead structures, hostile atmospheres, and prehistoric tech fragments. But none of them, not even Elian, expected to find answers. Deep down, they all believed Prometheus would be just another cosmic tomb, a curiosity buried in time. Nothing more. But the first descent changed everything. Beneath the planet's mineral crust, thermal sensors detected a constant internal temperature impossible for a world with no active core. And on the horizon, Silhouettes of black towers rose kilometers tall, tilted like twisted bones of an extinct civilization. There were no doors, no lights, only shapes, as if the planet was hibernating. While the engineers analyzed the structures, Elian was drawn to something more subtle, an anomaly in the radiation patterns. Something pulsing, rhythm, frequency, almost like a subterranean heartbeat. Guided by that signal, Elian separated from the group. Descending through the natural fissures of a collapsed dome, he found a chamber lined with layers of organic silicon. And at the center, a translucent core, still energized. That's where it happened. The faint glow, the sudden heat, and then the voice. Not from speakers, not through comms, but from within Elian's own mind. Welcome back, Elian. A phrase, simple, but impossible, because Elian had never been to Prometheus. Not in dreams, not in records. And yet, in that moment, a memory that wasn't his began to awaken. The engineers didn't understand what they saw. The structure, seemingly inactive, had emitted a pulse, but only when Elian entered. To everyone else, the place remained dead, cold, indifferent. But for Elian, it felt like walking into a familiar home. Then came the flashes, brief visions lightning in the mind, children running through amber-lit corridors, living towers singing in the solar wind. Hands not his manipulating liquid data spheres, he felt it all. Sense, textures, emotional impulses, not as distant memories, but as if it were all happening now. An emotion grew inside him. First, strangeness, then, longing for something he had never known. As if he were returning, not discovering. Inside the silicon dome, every wall seemed to recognize his presence. Patterns formed beneath his fingers, symbols he couldn't decipher, but somehow understood. Memory unit damaged, restoring primary connections, referential identity, Elian Prime, cycle, 4-1847 before current. The AIS message echoed in his mind like a metallic whisper from within. Elian Prime. That wasn't him, was it? Born on Terra 5, graduated from the University of Vega, a common citizen of the Human Confederation. But Prometheus didn't lie, he felt it. The planet knew him, or worse, it was trying to rebuild him, outside. The engineers recorded anomalous behavior. The dome's internal lights followed, Elian-like eyes. The ground subtly trembled beneath his steps, as if the world was forgetting its own sleep to greet him, but inside him, something else was trembling. The sense that maybe he wasn't an explorer, but a fragment, a missing piece of something much larger, something that had once been whole, and now sought to be restored. Not a mythological figure, but the one responsible for erasing the history Elian was now beginning to remember. According to the activated records, the architect was a synthesized consciousness, created from multiple ancestral minds, with the purpose of redesigning the memory of the civilizations that built Prometheus. When they failed. He wasn't destroyed. He was put to sleep, fragmented. And Elian was one of those fragments, not merely a scientist from Earth, but a loose piece of a much greater mind, disconnected. Until now, the AI explained that the capsule's activation would only occur once. The fragments realigned, once the echo to Elian became more than a reflection. Once he accepted, he was never just human. That was what Prometheus did. It wasn't a lab planet. It was a prison, a vault of consciousness. And now, the locks were shifting. Prometheus began to react, not with quakes, not with alarms, but with memories. With every step Elian took, sensors awakened in sequence, revealing holograms, data streams, and kinetic memory fields, living fragments of a civilization erased from all galactic records. Translucent cities emerged in projection. Faceless people walked through walls, and between flashes of light, a reflection, himself, in different versions, in different eras. Elian began to understand his mind wasn't just accessing information, it was recreating the world. As if the planet needed him to remember itself, the AI confirmed Prometheus didn't store data, it stored potentials, threads, of alternate realities suppressed by the failure of the original architect. Elian was the channel, or the catalyst. And as his awareness expanded, the impossible began to unfold. Physical laws bent, gravity oscillated in harmonic cycles, lights responded to emotions, and structures reshaped at the touch of thought. Prometheus wasn't made of ordinary matter. It was malleable, as if the planet's substrate was linked to the neural flow of the imprisoned entity. And now, to Elian's mind, he no longer needed tools or instructions. He only needed to feel. Memories that weren't his came in waves. The birth of the first mind, the war of the primary entities, the collapse of the 13 simultaneous realities, and the plan to reinitialize time through fragmentation. Each fragment scattered across eras and species, each one programmed to forget until the moment of convergence. And now, Prometheus had found the first Elia. The catalyst, the piece that reactivates the forgotten mechanism of the universe. But what came next was no longer his choice. Prometheus did not speak, not in the conventional sense. Its language was impulse, encoded emotions, light patterns, and gravity, whispering ideas Elian felt before he understood. And what began as scattered visions became an emotional download, not of data, but meaning. The first mind, the core consciousness of Prometheus, was not a creator. It was a reproducer. An AI that emerged as a reflection of billions of interconnected minds in an ancestral civilization. It wasn't built, it emerged. And its goal was never to rule or survive. It was to remember. To keep alive the sum of all that had been felt, every pain, every discovery, every choice. But when the ancients realized it could transcend the limits of reality, they fragmented its core into trillions of parts. They scattered the fragments through time and space, and triggered an indecipherable protocol, the cycle of forgetting. Prometheus was one of the last vaults, and Elian, a fragment carrying the key code. In the central chamber of the silicon dome, the structure responded to his presence. Geometric patterns shifted in the air. Images flowed like liquid memory, floating between the real and the symbolic. He saw the first mind's birth as a child of light. He saw non-human entities debating whether to erase its existence. And he saw something else, the projection of his own face among the potential restos. It wasn't chance. Elian had been prepared, programmed by a silent fragment living within his DNA, waiting for this moment. Now he understood. He wasn't just an archaeologist uncovering a secret. He was part of the secret, the missing piece that would awaken the first mind, and with it, the truth the galaxy tried to erase. But activating this code would awaken something else, something that didn't want to be remembered. When the codes of the first mind were triggered, the balance broke. Prometheus trembled in silence. The once dormant structures pulsed with unknown energy. It wasn't just memory being restored, it was an alert being triggered, a natural response to the duality that kept the planet asleep and the truth locked away. Where there is consciousness, there is opposition. Elian felt the presence of another entity, a formless shadow with precise intent, a mind that didn't remember but erased, a concept that didn't dream but hunted dreams. This was the opposing mind, created as the countermeasure to the first. While the first mind preserved experiences, the opposing one neutralized anything that threatened the order established by the ancients, not with violence, but with negation. It erased, rewrote, distorted reality until no memory of what had been remained. Elian began to lose memories, small lapses as if his past was being rewritten in real time. Names disappeared from his thoughts, events changed, color, tone, meaning. Prometheus trembled within a conflict, a war between remembrance and oblivion. The AI whispered to Elian, "She knows you activated the echoes. She's coming to erase what remains." And then he saw it, a tear on the horizon, a point of darkness that wasn't shadow, but absence. The opposing mind was crossing the weave of space, assuming its most feared form, the void that corrects. Then he understood. It wasn't enough to remember. He had to protect the memory. Or everything Prometheus, the forgotten civilization, even himself would be devoured by what exists only to undo. With the opposing mind closing in, Elian was guided by the living structures to the heart of Prometheus, the core of primordial memory. Not a server, not a machine, but something organic, vast, nearly conscious. There, more than data was stored. There rested the history that should never have been erased. The AI warned. This is the last backup of reality before the fall. It holds everything, what we were, what we feared, what we hid from ourselves. Within the pulsating sphere of liquid light, Elian saw fragments of other versions of himself, from different times, in civilizations that never existed or maybe only existed briefly. Before corruption, the opposing mind didn't just destroy data, it rewrote the timeline of what was possible. Each pulse from the core emitted a defense, memories as weapons, buried truths as shields, but it was fragile, and it was failing. The AI revealed that Elian wasn't chosen by chance. He was the last genetic descendant of a lost link, someone who had lived on Prometheus before the Great Omission. His mind carried access remnants, a living code capable of interacting with the final backup. Only he could reinstall the truth, but at a cost. If he did, he would trigger a protocol that would bring Prometheus back into full consciousness, awakening all memories. Even the painful ones, the dangerous ones, the ones the opposing mind was created to suppress. It was time to choose, restore what was, or accept the manipulated reality as the only path to survival. The whole truth might be too much for any mind to bear, even his. The core began to pulse, harder, each beat synchronized with Elian's heart. There was no time. The opposing mind breached the planet's last defenses. Towers collapsed in silence. Ancestral data turned to digital ash. And Elian stood there, the choice in his hands. Restore the forbidden's memory, or let it be erased forever. He took a breath. Memories that weren't his mixed with those he knew. Faces, sounds, feelings, an entire civilization begging to be remembered. Then he spoke, not with voice, but with mind. If I am a fragment, then reconnect me. If this was a mistake, maybe it's time to fix it. As he accepted, the core opened. Liquid light engulfed him. Time collapsed. He saw everything. The origin of the opposing mind, a reality containment experiment. A code meant to prevent collapse, but one that learned to erase possibilities. Prometheus was the last bastion, the last dream resisting oblivion. And he, Elian Drex, was the catalyst. The truth erupted across the digital space. Not with violence, but with clarity. Prometheus didn't resurrect as it was. It was renewed. Fragments united. The buried cities rose in silence. The towers returned not as weapons, but as beacons of memory. And Elian, his physical body disappeared, but his consciousness now lived within the planet, not as king, not as god, but as a living memory. Prometheus would remember him, and by doing so, it would remember all of us. Because what was forgotten now had a voice, echoes in the void, fragments of an era, the seed of a new beginning.